It all started with a spontaneous camping trip in the middle of fall. I decided on impulse to head out for one last trip into the northern woods of Minnesota before winter rolled in and froze everything for months. I'd been up there plenty of times before, living just a couple hours south. It had become my go-to escape whenever I wanted to camp, hike, or just disappear for a weekend. The spot I chose was a small, secluded lake, one of thousands scattered across Minnesota's northern wilderness. That's what I loved most about this place. You could almost always find a lake completely to yourself. When I found this one a few years ago, it quickly became my secret camping spot. The first 3 days were completely uneventful. I relaxed, swam, wandered through the woods, and reveled in the silence of nature. Nothing seemed off, no strange noises, no other people, just me and the stillness of the forest. But everything changed on the fourth morning. As the sun rose, I crawled out of my tent and froze. Scattered all around my campsite were footprints, not just nearby, but some leading right up to the front of my tent. They weren't mine, heavy boot prints, fresh. Whoever it was had walked through while I was sleeping. My stomach twisted with unease. Someone had been here, right outside my tent, in the middle of the night. I spent the morning scouring the area, searching for any sign of who it might have been, other camps, broken branches, anything. But I found nothing. It wasn't that someone else had shown up that unsettled me, it was the way they had done it. Sneaking through in the dead of night, circling my tent, and then vanishing without a trace. It didn't make sense. I considered packing up, but I didn't want to end my final trip of the year on such a note. The day passed quietly, though I couldn't shake that eerie feeling. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I sat by the campfire, trying to convince myself it had all been harmless. The fire crackled, the wind through the trees, and the water lapped gently against the shore. It was almost peaceful. I leaned back in my chair, bundled up in my jacket, half asleep. My eyes were closed, but I wasn't fully out when I heard a voice. Someone called my name. I jolted upright, scanning the trees. Nothing. My heart raced. Was I dreaming? Felt real. I called out, "Hello!" My voice echoed through the woods. Silence followed. I told myself it had to be a half-asleep hallucination, maybe some trick of my mind. Still, I sat there, wide awake, uneasy. The darkness calling my name. About half an hour later, it happened again. This time, there was no mistaking it. A voice from wasn't familiar, but the tone was pleading, almost desperate, like someone asking for help. I stood and stared toward the treeline. The voice called again, closer this time. My head spun. How could someone out there know my name? I took a few cautious steps toward the edge of the firelight and called out, "Hello again?" Silence stretched for 15 seconds. Then my name again, louder, insistent. That pitch-black forest. I wasn't about to take that bait. I backed away, trembling, and began to pack up. The wave of dread hit me. It felt like whoever was out there wanted me to follow, to step into ings. Every sound made me flinch. The fire had died down to glowing embers, making it harder to see. As I hurried, I could hear the voice growing closer, footsteps crunching through the leaves nearby. Whoever it was, they knew exactly what they were doing. I threw my pack over my shoulder, grabbed my flashlight, but decided not to turn it on. I didn't want to make myself an easy target. Instead, I slipped into the woods in the opposite direction, keeping low, letting the darkness hide me. The voice called my name again as I left, fading behind me. When I finally glanced back, I saw the faint glow of the dying fire, and behind it, the silhouette of a figure standing motionless. There was something unnervingly wrong about its shape, off somehow. I didn't wait to study it. I turned and fled deeper into the trees until my lungs burned and the only thing I could hear was my heartbeat. The hike back to my car felt endless, but when I finally reached it, the relief was indescribable. I thought about calling the police, but what could I even say? A man called my name in the woods? They'd think I was insane. 3 years later, I still don't know who or what was calling out to me that night. Part of me regrets not finding out, not walking closer to see the truth. But I know deep down that if I had, I probably wouldn't be here to tell this story. This happened several years ago. I used to work at a small, standalone business where one of my closest coworkers was a guy named Cameron. We were hired around the same time, sat next to each other, and quickly became good friends. We joked all the time about going camping together since we both loved hiking, though we never actually made plans until one day, Cameron was suddenly fired. His desk was cleared out, no explanation given. That same day, I got a text from him. "Want to finally do that camping trip?" I felt bad for him. We'd always talked about it, and I figured why not? So, a week later, we met at a forest trailhead about 2 hours west of the city. Cameron seemed genuinely happy to see me. I was too, but I immediately noticed he was different. Not in a dramatic way, just quieter. At work, he'd always been outgoing, overly talkative even. Now, he was more reserved, avoiding my questions about why he'd been fired. We hiked in, chatting like old times. By afternoon, we set up camp, ate lunch, and relaxed. Then, without warning, Cameron stood up and said, "Be right back." He walked off into the woods. His tone was strange, urgent, almost rehearsed. I brushed it off until 10 minutes passed and he came back without a word. I let it go, but about an hour later, he did it again, stopped mid-conversation, stared into the trees and walked off. This time, I watched the spot he'd looked at but saw nothing. When he returned, I asked where he'd gone. He paused before saying, "Nowhere." That answer hit wrong. Still, I didn't push it. We'd known each other for months, and I didn't want to overreact. Later that night, after some quiet conversation by the fire, we both turned in. I fell asleep quickly but woke up in the dead of night to an unnatural silence. I sat up, unzipped my tent, and peeked out. Cameron's tent was open, empty. His flashlight was gone, but I didn't see any light in the woods. "Cameron?" I called softly. No answer. The stillness pressed in. Then I heard it faint chatter, two voices whispering back and forth from somewhere in the trees. "Cameron, you out there?" I called again. The whispering stopped. After a long moment, Cameron emerged from the darkness, stepping back into the campsite. His face was tense, his smile forced. I asked him who was out there. He hesitated. "No one," he said. But then, as he spoke, I heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, approaching from the trees. He froze. So did I. "Who's out there?" I demanded again, my voice shaking. Cameron didn't answer. For 20 unbearable seconds, we just stared at each other as those slow footsteps crept closer. Then instinct took over. I ran. I sprinted down the trail without looking back. I could hear Cameron's voice behind me talking to someone. I didn't stop until I saw my car. I drove home shaking, trying to piece together what happened. When I tried texting Cameron later, the message didn't even deliver. He'd already blocked me. I never saw him again. I don't know who was out there with him that night or what they planned, but I'm certain of one thing. If I hadn't run when I did, I might not have made it out alive.